to today's webinar. My name is Jenna Farber and I'm with Emerging Destinations. We represent cool companies and cool places. Today I'm being joined by Melanie McTurk, who's the Managing Director of Karanambu Lodge in the North Rupununi in Guyana. Before I introduce her and let her introduce to you more about what they do and where they're located, etc. I will just take a quick minute to give you guys some housekeeping notes. So this webinar, as always, will be recorded. So you can find our previously recorded webinars on our Emerging Destinations website and our YouTube channel. So if there's anything there that you want to peruse, we actually have a Guyana folder. So if you do want to learn more about other locations or activities that you can do in Guyana, then you can find those there. And this, of course, will be posted. So we will do, as always, as well. Hopefully this isn't your first Emerging Destinations webinar, but if it is, we are using GoToWebinar and they kind of have a new look these days. So hopefully you've adjusted to that. But there is, through the control panel, you're able to type through any questions that you might have. So at the end of today's session, we will be doing a bit of a Q&A. So please feel free to keep track of those or type them through even as the presentation is ongoing so that we can ask Melanie any of the questions at the end of the presentation. So I think that's everything that I have to say. In case I miss anything, if you do have any questions for me, you can send me an email as well. I'm more than happy to help you out with anything Emerging Destinations related, whether that be a one-on-one training or for you and your agency. I'm very happy to do that. And my email address is jenna@emergingdestinations.com. So please feel free to reach out to me. But I think that is everything I need to say. I will jump back on at the end to do the Q&A session. So I enjoyed today's presentation. I absolutely love Karanambu. I had my first opportunity to visit the lodge myself in April of this year, and we had a fabulous time. So I'm really looking forward to today's webinar, and I think you guys will enjoy it too. So that's all I'm going to say, Melanie. It's over to you.
Thanks, Jenna. All right, guys. Well, good afternoon. My name is Melanie McTurk. I'm Managing Director here at Karanambu Lodge at Karanambu. So Karanambu is 110 square miles. So just wrap your head around that to begin with. And let's get into it, eh? So first of all, Karanambu is a family-owned business, and I'm actually sitting in the original main house that was built in the 1920s. And just to give you a sense of what that really means is that we're the third generation of McTurks living in situ. So Karanambu was built by my husband's grandfather, Tiny McTurk, and this is way back in the day. And one of the highlights, of course, of that period was that a very young David Attenborough visited Karanambu, and we still all sit around the original dining table that was here at that time. So many people would have first learned about Karanambu through the writings of David Attenborough and the many other naturalists and adventure travelers who came after him. Then, of course, Karanambu became famous a second time for the work of Deanne McTurk, my husband's aunt. So Deanne, or Miss Deanne, or Auntie Deanne, as so many people will call her, was a real pioneer and a woman so ahead of her time. She was a visionary who really moved Karanambu into what is today's current existence, which is Deanne McTurk is credited with being the pioneer of not only nature-based tourism in Guyana, but also conservation. And she was one of the first people who started to fight for the protection of the Rupununi wetlands. And that's important to note because Karanambu actually is found at the heart of the Rupununi wetlands. And of course, Deanne McTurk went on to be known as the Otter Lady because of the groundbreaking work she did rescuing and reintroducing giant otters, which Karanambu still continues today, along with many other conservation projects. And just to bring us up to the present day, that's my husband and I. And yeah, we're the faces you'll meet or your guests will meet when they visit these days, because remember, this is a very immersive experience and we all sit around the same family table. And this is one of my favorite photographs. This is of all our amazing staff who contribute throughout the year to the Karanambu experience and making sure that our guests have a great experience. So a couple quick facts to be reminded about Karanambu, and hopefully I'm not going too fast. If so, let Jenna know and she'll bleep me or something. So Karanambu is 110 square miles. Within that, and it's found at the very heart of the Rupununi wetlands, the North Rupununi wetlands of Guyana. Sorry about that. Within that area, we have 5 distinct habitats. Sorry. So we've got a 20-mile stretch of river. We've got a huge area of savannas. We've got bush islands. We've got seasonally flooded forests. And because of that, it makes it a very unique habitat in terms of the biodiversity that is present in Karanambu. Karanambu itself was built in the 1920s. There's Tiny and Connie again. And Karanambu became a protected area in the 1990s. Again, well ahead of her time, Diane McTurk created the first private protected area in Guyana, which is Karanambu. Currently, we're actually fighting for IUC for status within the National Protected Area System, but that's another conversation. So within the Karanambu area, you're going to have things like we've got over 700 species of fish. We've got over 400 species of birds, including a number of endemic ones that are quite rare. We have 9 species of giants, your jaguar, your giant otter, your giant anteater, your tapir, your capybara, and of course the giant water lily, the Victoria amazonica, the black caiman, which again are the largest of their kind. And we've got 6 species of monkeys. And this means that on any given outing, there's a whole range of creatures that you can encounter. And we work really hard to try and make those encounters happen. Now, this is just to give you a context. This is looking at Karanambu from the riverside. So the river would be on this side. This is actually the small runway. So Karanambu has 2 airstrips, a small runway that runs right in front of the cabins, and a big one that's way out in the savannah, about a good 15 minutes drive from the main compound. This is the main compound and where our main cabins are. And the give you a sense of where Karanambu is in context from Georgetown. So the average tourist is going to drive to Lethem and then take an overland trip. This overland journey is about 2.5 hours if you're coming from Lethem in the south of the Rupununi. And then it's going to, and these are on dirt roads that bring you back to Karanambu. Now, there are a few slight variations in this route depending on the time of year, but this is the gist of what is happening with many of our people who are either coming straight from Lethem and starting their Rupununi journey here at Karanambu, or if they've come the other way and they're ending their Rupununi journey at Karanambu. So let me go on to the next slide. That gives us a sense of what that North Rupununi journey is. So if they've flown into Iwokrama at Kurupakari, they might have visited Atta Lodge or Sarama, maybe Anai or Pakaraima Mountain Inn, and they've been dropped off at Ginip Landing. So you're going to see in a lot of Karanambu itineraries a transfer happening at this site at Ginip Landing. Ginip Landing is the closest point between the river and the road. And why this is important is this overland journey, especially during wetter months can be quite uncomfortable. It's about 3, sometimes 4 hours overland to Karanambu. And so we often like to do a river transfer, which is about 2.5 hours between Guinea Landing and Karanambu. And the difference between being in a vehicle bouncing across the savannah with very little visibility as against being in the boat, and the entire journey becomes an expedition itself, with opportunities to view caiman and birds and other wildlife on the way. So we work really hard when we're doing this Guinea transfer to get it at a time that will optimize your guests viewing as well as their comfort, because we don't want to do it too late so that they're exposed to the heat. The other thing I want to note again is between Karanambu and Upakari, so Caiman House. If your guests are going on to Caiman House, it's a very short distance. Again, depending on time of year, if we have enough water in the river, we are definitely wanting to prioritize a river journey there. Again, just because it's going to be so much more pleasurable for your guests versus a shorter trip that may be by road, but with a lot less chances of seeing wildlife. So this is to give you a sense of the sort of vehicles we have available for those transfers, depending on the size of the group. And we work with other local transfer providers. If it's by river that you're traveling, this is the sort of boat we have. It's a small outboard motor. And of course, life jackets are mandatory. And what's really exciting is, remember that big airstrip I told you about? Well, we can receive direct charters. So depending on the size of your group, depending on the nature of the travel, we can help you organize for either direct charter to Karanambu or out of Karanambu. And I just want to add at this point that if you're doing the direct charter, this is a wonderful opportunity to maybe stitch in a trip to Kaieteur, either going to Kaieteur and then dropping off guests at Karanambu, or leaving Karanambu and catching Kaieteur on the way to Georgetown. And maybe not for every guest, but we have been getting a few solo traveler requests for motorcycle transfers. And we have been doing that in collaboration with our local village of Quaimata. So they now have the giant anteater motorcycle crew. And you'll meet them again just now. Again, sometimes we're getting, and increasingly we're getting, self-driving visitors, where people are renting a vehicle in Georgetown and then driving their own way up to the Rupununi. And that will require a little extra support, but perfectly doable, and certainly will be more doable in the years to come because of the work being done on that road from Georgetown, which is the main corridor. All right, if you don't mind, I'm going to just take a sip of water. So everybody asks, I know this is it, what does the accommodation look like? We like to think of ourselves as, you know, the glamorous side of the Rupununi, but it's important to note that it is a thatch building. Most of our buildings are thatch and clay brick. They're very original architecture. The bricks are made here. Everything is made here at Karanambu. And it's important to note because the rooms are designed to be as cool as possible in the environment. So there's no screening. There's definitely no air conditioning. But we've actually been working to retain that traditional ethos, but also upgrade a little by putting in some nicer beds and using some of the local wood to do some nicer vanities and things like that. And in all of our houses, things like water are already provided. Important to note, laundry is complimentary. If your guests put it in the morning, provided we've got sun, they can usually get it back the same day by evening. Turn down is complimentary. We know that most people are not accustomed to dealing with mosquito nets. Ours are specially designed for our rooms. And so our ladies will come in, put down the mosquito net, even spray insecticide and light the or other mosquito coils. And just to note, Wi-Fi on the premises is free. It may not be available in every room, but it is free at all times throughout the day. And to get a sense of what the compound looks like, so in order to encourage birds and insects and things like that, we've been doing a lot of planting around the compound. And so there is this wonderful amount of greenery. And please note the spacing between cabins so that people do retain their individual privacy. And the fact that we do have this large cabin on the left-hand side here that doesn't have a thatch roof. But it still has many of the beasties that maybe you would associate with the thatch roof. Again, the yard from another vantage point. And this one shows one of the water tanks. So each of our cabins has its own water tank. And yet another one of our rooms. And a little glimpse at the otter house, which is where any animals that might be with us, any orphaned or rescued animals that are with us would be staying. So the typical room is going to have a veranda with hammocks and your room inside. The Karanambu Trust House is also here. It has a larger space between the two rooms that allows us, if there are larger groups who are doing lectures or seminars, to facilitate that in there. And then in the room itself, I just want to point out a few little features. Again, all of these windows open to maximize airflow. This door leads to the bathroom. So we have added this solar fans. The fans have a solar panel that is outside of the room, and it has a built-in battery so that persons can bring the fan as close to the bed as they want. and then electricity, again, it is available in all our cabins. It should be available 24 hours a day, but it is solar. So there are little restrictions on the sort of things you can charge. The general type of cell phone or camera is fine. Coming on to the culinary experiences. Now, we like to pride ourselves on the fact that we can deal with any diet, but we do need warning. And just to say, again, we're 2.5 hours away from the closest shop. So if we have prior warning about eating restrictions, and we can do our purchases for your visit around that. If someone has already arrived and then we're discovering eating restriction, it might be a bit more challenging. All right. The important thing is we really like to focus our meals on the fresh things available in our environment and in our communities. So the day starts with coffee and tea under the mango trees, and this is usually at 5:15 in the morning before we head out for our first excursion. After your first excursion, you're returning to the main house for breakfast. And I like to say breakfast comes in two parts. So the first part of breakfast is our fruit and cereals and porridge and things like that. And on our table, we feature lots of locally made jams and jellies and peppers and all sorts of things, which we were always very proud of, because we like to say everything on our breakfast table is locally made. But what many of our guests keep saying is second breakfast. The second part of breakfast. No, we're not hobbits. The second part of breakfast is the cooked breakfast, and that's where you're going to get your eggs and your sausages and various other things. And again, with all our menus, we integrate a few familiar things like the pancakes in this case, with things that might be a little bit more exotic, a little bit more Guyanese, such as I think in this case we had pepper pot and we had belange choker, which is made of eggplant. So every meal, we're trying to make sure you have a little bit of the familiar and a little bit of the very Guyanese, because there are also eggs and sausages here. Lunches. Our lunches we now like to take on one of our big mango trees in the middle of the compound. It's a picnic lunch. It's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more laid back. And again, depending on the dietary, we're trying to plan a nice fill-in menu, but not too heavy because you've had a really heavy breakfast. And lunch is usually served around 1 o'clock. This is probably the only meal where we have a specific time, and I'll explain that to you in a second. So in the evenings, our guests are going out around 4:30 on whether it's the river or the savannas in search of wildlife. And our rule is, if you're having fun, you keep having fun. And that's why we don't have a hard time for either breakfast or dinner. What we do is we do all the prep. And then 20 minutes after guests return from their excursion is when we do the final cooking. So the meals are always fresh and hot. But at the same time, nobody is saying, oh my gosh, here's an amazing sight of a jaguar eating a caiman, but we got to go now because it's time for dinner. No, that's never going to happen at Karanambu. Our main dinner is served at the main house, the family home. And again, this is the same house that's been here since the 1920s. And during your stay, you're going to learn a lot about the history of Karanambu, the family, and the region. The meal usually starts with appetizers and, of course, our customary rum punches served out on the patio. And then we come in for the main meal itself, which is served once again at our traditional dining table. And we have little wings that are added to this table depending on the group size. But whenever possible, we like to use the original table itself. And for guests who are staying 3 nights or more, we usually host, or if it's a really large group staying 2 nights, we host a barbecue under yet another set of mango trees. I know there were ones over there. These are the oldest ones, though. These are the ones that are in their 80s. And it makes a wonderful evening. And each meal, we are varying the presentation, because the way I like to say to people is, we know we've got you trapped. You can't go out to a different restaurant. So we make it feel like you get a little bit of variety between the meals. And we now also have our orchid house up and running. And we've been collecting orchids from all around the Rupununi. So maybe if you're lucky, some of our native orchids will be in bloom when your guests visit. And it's also designed in such a way that we can have dinner or breakfasts out here also. We also use this if we have really, really large groups, because it is adjacent to the main house. Isn't that nice to be just surrounded by all those lovely orchids and flowers? All right, so moving on to activities. I'm going to have to take another sip. Well, if you've heard of Karanambu, you've probably heard of one of these 3 activities, because these are our most popular ones. And if you've got persons come in maybe for a 2-night itinerary, these are the basic ones you want to make sure you get in at least once. Blooming of the Victoria Amazonica lily. Again, Victoria is Guyana's national flower. She is also one of the world's largest water lilies. And at Karanambu, we have what has been asserted to be the best wild collection of them in the world. We've got 25 ponds in which Amazonica grows right now. And so it's pretty much a guarantee that regardless of what time of year you visit, we can find a lily pad and hopefully a flower blooming. And that process of the flower opening takes between 30 to 45 minutes. And then the golden beetles come in, and you get to learn all about the flower, the plant, its importance to the ecosystem, its history. This is a plant that changed the world of architecture. We're very proud of that, and you get to learn a lot of that. But this is an evening activity, and very often we put it as one of the first evening activities for guests arriving. The second activity that is, again, pretty popular is the sighting of a giant anteater. Now, we can never guarantee this, and I really want to stress that. But we do have some of the highest success rates within the region of successful sightings of giant anteaters. And so this is your early morning coffee and tea at 5:15, loading up into the trucks and heading out on the savanna. And of course, this excursion is also assisted by our vaqueros, who are also out helping us to search. Now, one of the things that's really important to note, and why I always prefer the all-inclusive package, is if your guests have not seen the anteater on the first morning, then it's really easy for us to give them the option on the second morning of going out again and searching for giant anteaters. And it is very rare that we'll go out on 2 occasions and not find have a successful sighting. So that's really important to note, because we do offer a tiered back package, and then you can add individual activities, but it does sometimes I think it does a disservice to your guests, because then they have to pay for the extras. So just something to note. And of course, everybody's absolute favorite, Karanambu, because of its conservation work with giant otters, is home to a very healthy collection of wild giant otters. And again, they're active in the early morning or in the late evening. So if you were doing a 2-night itinerary, then chances are what your guests would be doing is water lilies the first evening, anteaters the first morning, giant otters on the river, looking for giant otters the second evening, and then depending on how successful our first anteater excursion was, we would give people the option of an early morning river trip looking for otters again, or an early morning savanna trip looking for anteaters. Now, as a standard practice, we also include a short trail walk after breakfast on days when people are there all day. And this is important to note because we have lots of walking trails and hikes depending on the interests and of your guests. And again, it's a wonderful opportunity to keep spotting wildlife throughout the day. Even though we do encourage people, I will be upfront about this, we do encourage people to have a siesta after lunch because it is so hot. With all our guests, we also encourage them to be part of our ongoing conservation efforts. So we do have an iNaturalist project that guests can contribute their photographs and sightings to. But if you've got people who are staying with us more than your standard 2 nights, then there's still a lot of other things to do. Karanambu has 35 ponds. Each one of those ponds has an array of wildlife associated with it. And depending on the interests of your guests, we can explore each of those individually. Night spotting is something we try to, again, pull into each package every evening that you're there. On the way back, we want to do a little bit of night spotting, maybe for caiman, maybe for snakes. If you've got birders who are really looking for intensive night spotting for birds, that might have to be an add-on activity, just something to note. The savanna, again, I know everybody loves the anteaters, but there's a lot more out there besides the anteaters. And Karanambu has a variety of options in terms of swimming these days, including the river, but we also have an inland dam with very clear water, which has become very popular. And of course, fishing. And Karanambu offers what I think of as 3 distinct forms of fishing. So you can try traditional fishing, like the way the Makushi have done it traditionally, try a hand line, try with an arrow and bow, or you can do novice fishing, which is um, essentially that you're just doing it as an add-on to another excursion that you've already is already part of your package. Or if you've got a serious angler who really wants to go out there and bring home the fish, then look at one of our half day or full day fishing packages. All right. And of course, we also have a variety of camping options today. Simuni is one of our famous fishing areas, and so traditionally we have offered fishermen if they wanted to overnight in Simuni. But today we also have Capybara Camp, which is in the savannah, and we've had a few instances where people who are here staying at the lodge have asked or requested to also spend one night out at the campsite, camping in a tent. Specialty activities that you do need to be mindful of: exploring the flooded forest. This maybe is one of my favorite activities because the entire landscape takes on the sense of the primordial. But it is a green season activity, so it's only when we have the rains. So it's June, July, usually into August. And during that time is also, if you do have them, your orchid enthusiasts. Karanambu has a number of wild orchids that grow around this area, and we are always really excited to show them to people. But definitely the standout event of the wet season, the green season, is Crane Pond, where thousands of birds come to nest, and we are able to get really up close and intimate. This is wonderful for people who enjoy wildlife, but maybe are not that hardcore birders. This is also an activity that we've seen is really good with families and people traveling with children. And this is July and August. This is usually available. And depending on what time of year, we get to see the nests, we get to see the chicks, we get to see all sorts of wonderful activity. So cultural experiences. These are definitely add-ons, but we have been working very closely with the communities around us in order to create these very authentic experiences, whether it's learning to process cassava or visiting the village during a festival time. We also have a project with Kwatata Village where traditional craftsmen can come and spend the morning with you, teaching you how to weave or how to spin cotton. And you might remember that I mentioned our motorcycle crew. Well, if during that Antietam excursion you'd like to do it from the back of a motorcycle, this is the crew we call in, and it gives a really amazing different perspective to the experience. And of course, all of these projects directly support not only communities but cultural preservation, which is so important at this time. Oy, all right, so the what to pack. I would say a couple things. People are going to be walking with anyhow, even if they're not birders. Binoculars are good to have. These days, most people are walking with their water bottle, but not everybody's walking with a bathing suit. And for those people who are brave enough, it's not mandatory that you swim in a bathing suit, but certainly most people are more comfortable if they have the correct gear. But I would say of all the things to walk with, the absolute most critical one is a good flashlight or torch, because there's nothing quite as wonderful as spotting caiman eyes down the barrel of your own torch. Now we do have specialty packages because we've been seeing a lot of uptake in these three areas especially. So we do have a special package for persons who are doing for film crews or persons who are doing professional photography or photography based tour groups. We also offer special packages for researchers, especially if that research can be shared with us and become part of our body of research information about Karanambu itself. And we have been seeing a real increase in macro photography and insect enthusiasts. And this was shared with me recently from one of our recent groups. Now, it's important to note that Karanambu does from time to time still occasionally have animals in care, whether they're giant otters or other creatures. And we do ask people to please be mindful when they are interacting. So this is not the sort of thing where we're encouraging people to go and swim with otters, and we certainly don't want pictures of that nature being shared because they can give the wrong impression about the work we do. And so there is a little bit of a reminder there that the welfare of our animals do come first. And just to give you a sense, so Karanambu has a special MOU with the Wildlife Commission that allows us to take in not just giant otters, but any other animals that may need care and nurturing with the intention of returning them to the wild. And this was a Jaguarundi cub. He successfully went off. This is when our dear sweet Ivar, my idiot, first arrived here at Karanambu. He is still with us. And this was a margay, a greater grisson, and we even had a striped owl who fell out of the nest maybe a little too early. And so he needed to stay with us for a little bit until he was able to hunt on his own. Now, we are proud to be a nationally accredited tourism operation. We are certified by the Guyana Tourism Authority. We just won the Tourism and Hospitality Association of Guyana's Resort and Lodge of the Year Award. And we have received wildlife friendly tourism certification from Visit Rupununi, which is a local institution here in the Rupununi that looks specifically at supporting wildlife friendly tourism initiatives. But Karanambu is also a platinum rated good travel destination. We recently got our Tourism Cares Impact Partner certification. We're among the top 100 stories. We've got Hospitality Assured Caribbean certification. But what we're also really proud of is that we are an LGBTQ friendly location. Now, in terms of payments, I'm happy to say it's gotten better. For some of you who may have seen Karanambu in the past, you may have known that in the past, bank transfers were the only option for Guyana. Thankfully, this is changing. We can now accept Visa and MasterCard, and we even have a unit on site at the lodge where people can pay for extra things, souvenirs, extra tours, wine from the bar, what have you. And we also have a We Travel account. So depending on what platform, what type of card, we've got options that work. Now, hopefully at this point, you're all thinking you really need to make a booking. Yes, I agree. So ground operators. We work with all of the main ground operators here in Guyana, especially Wilderness Explorers. They're one of our oldest partners. And especially if you're putting together a package with lots of different moving parts going to different locations, having a ground operator to support that coordination, that extra insurance element, and in the event of an emergency, tap on wood, hopefully it's not needed. It's really good to have. And we have an excellent relationship with all our ground operators. However, if you are looking to book directly with us, then our wonderful team, who I'm very proud of, can certainly support you through that, especially with flights and other add-on things. So Marcel is the one you're probably going to get if you use the cell phone, and Dougal if you're emailing. And between the two of them, they can pretty much answer all of your questions. If it's something more specialized, custom itineraries and things like that, then you're going to want to talk to me directly. Feel free. I'm always available. All right. Whew. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
And
Melanie. Oh, sorry. Sorry, you had a little bit of a break there. So, yeah. Um, so we did go a little bit over on time. So I'm just gonna take a couple of the questions that we have here, Melanie, and then there's a few people that already had to leave. So I will make sure that we get back to them with the answers to
oh,
their
shucks.
questions.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. I know that you're such a good talker, and I know that you have lots of information to share. So no worries. It was a great presentation, and you did a great job of describing exactly what Karanambu is about. So thank you for that. All right, let's get to these couple questions quick before we move on. So one of the questions is, and I'm looking forward to hearing your answer on this one. What is the spider situation in the rooms for those with arachnophobia?
Oh, okay.
Sorry to throw that one at you.
Yeah, well, if I'm let me be completely honest. Every room at Karanambo has creatures that live in it, from bats who live in the roof, or lizards who scurry around the floor, to frogs that like to join you for a bath, and some of the rooms definitely do have spiders. Um, the good news is, um, most of the spiders you're going to encounter are not going to be dangerous, and our team is on site to come and remove them if you need us to do so.
Yeah, and the team
So,
on site, I will say they are so good with handling those sorts of things. We had a group there, as I mentioned, in April, and they were just fabulous at hosting and taking care of us. So I do trust that they will keep you safe if you need assistance in any of those situations. Okay, let's do a couple more of these questions before we let things go. I'll give you a couple easier ones. Well, this one maybe not so much, but I also look forward to hearing your answer. So we're giving you the hard ones right off the bat, Mel. So another question for you is, you did mention swimming. So are there no caiman or otters in the swimming water?
they're definitely caiman, piranha, everything else in the swimming water. These are live waters, we like to say. So there are definitely lots of creatures in there. But
But in
my
terms of
my my
safety.
if you are brave enough to go in, you will be accompanied by ourselves, our staff.
And I will let you guys know that they do go swimming in those waters every single day. Even while I was there, Melanie was in the water. Her son was in the water. Lots of different members are in there daily. So it is not a direct threat, immediate threat, but just to be
Correct.
aware of that. And
And
you
if
would
there is a risk, we will advise you. So if something happens and we feel that you need to get out of the water, we will advise you of that. And there are also certain times of day that we restrict swimming to.
perfect. All right. So how hot is it without the AC? And I know this is going to change like seasonally. So maybe just speak really quickly, and this will be our last question. Speak really quickly to the seasonality, the two seasons, or ish in Guyana, if you will, and then the heat that people would have to be dealing with during those seasons.
All right, so let's start with the temperature. We're a few degrees off of the equator, so our temperatures tend to range from about uh, maybe 25, 26 degrees Celsius when it's raining or cool, to about 32 on average. Sometimes it'll spike
Okay.
up to 35, 37, because especially this year we're heading into an El Nino. So it's something to note. And this is why we've added those fans, because in the past we never needed fans before. The evenings used to be so cool. But today we find that we really need those fans to keep people comfortable.
And let me just
Uh,
interject there really briefly. Sorry to interrupt you, Melanie. In Fahrenheit, that'd be about 72 to 95 for all of you Americans out there. I'm Canadian, so of course I understood right away what you meant. But just in case you don't have that
Thank
conversion
you.
automatically, yeah, that would be like high or low 70s to high 90s at the worst. So
And of course, the year is divided into our wet season and dry season. So, wet season is usually from the end of May, or mid May, to August, the end of August. This year, the rains have already stopped, which is crazy to us all. But it's because we're heading into an El Nino.
okay. Perfect. Well, sorry, I know that I think that's actually it for most of the questions that we got to for those. But if you do have questions, you can email me, Jenna at emergingdestinations.com, and I can pass it along to Melanie and her team. But just for the time frame there, I know we've kept you guys extra long today, but as you know, Guyana is kind of an unfamiliar destination for a lot of people. So I know that a lot more questions come up when
Yeah.
during
And,
these
and I'm
webinars.
so sorry. I couldn't see the timer
That's okay,
because of
Melanie.
the
No, I would have
display.
interrupted you, but you're doing such a good job, and it's nice to have a really thorough presentation. And we've actually kept, most of the people are still here and attentive. So, as long as people are here and listening, then I just let it run. But we will wrap it up for there since it's 10 to just about now. So, thank you everybody for your time, and of course, Melanie, to you and your team, thank you for everything that you're doing in terms of conservation and for taking the time out of your day to share with us a little bit about Karanambu. It was a great presentation.
Thanks for having us, and hope to see
Okay.
some people soon around our family table.
Perfect. Thank you, Mel. Take care, everyone.